for me, my caravan was a chrysalis. It was really coming home to who I am and sorting out the junk in my trunk is another saying. Just having that time with you and yourself gives tremendous growth, and I solidly believe in everybody's lifetime it's a journey that you need to take. And I know that when I talk to people, and even about now that I'm in this down here in this beautiful beachside community that's quite remote, and I say to people, but why don't you live here? They're like, we just can't because, and underneath it all, I think it's that whole time with themselves. People don't want to have that time to think. Welcome to episode 6 of the Curious Bee podcast. I have just been up to the Big Smoke, Auckland, last week, doing the big under the house clean out. If you've been following along, that property was where I grew heaps of food, so under the house was absolutely packed full of pots and trays and garden this and garden that. So, oh my goodness, knitting, hoops, bags of soil and old seed raising mix and trophies of that property. And the owner that's bought it doesn't want any of it, so everything had to be rehomed. And I also wanted to rescue my garage cupboards, priorities to my new organised life, and bring them down here. So I got the furniture trailer, backed it in my driveway. You know, guys, girls, you got to learn how to back. How empowering is it to know how to back a trailer and not have to door knock and say, oh, can you help me back a trailer? So we are done. Trailer came back here. I am a bit of a night owl. That's why I'm recording this at 4:58 a.m. in the morning, because it's when I feel the most clear and everything's kind of coming through. So I would leave it like at 7:30 and then come back here by midnight. And I did that twice, backward and forward, because I had to, of course, take the trailer. I got it from there, pulled it back down the cupboards, took it back up. 2 bags of apples, 4 bunches of bananas later, I am back and ready to do my next. I feel like these first 6 episodes of this podcast are establishing. I know I did my backstory about my back, but just giving you, as listeners, a really rounded picture of my background as I have journeyed through this human experience, and before I then take this podcast to where I want to take it to with its curiosities and bringing people on and my vision. So here we go. This is all about my time in the caravan and how that all unfolded. So rewind 2023. I had got my kind of leave pass. It's funny. As I said, I was just up in Auckland and went to visit my ex-partner, and he was like, all you wanted was to be free. And you must be really happy now because you've achieved that. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I rewind, as I said, back to 2023. I things had actually got really, there's always a shadow or a darkness or something really, really hard that comes up in our lives that makes us do the big scary thing, that gives us the most growth and moves us into alignment into where and what we meant to be doing on a soul level. And for me, what had happened at the end of 2023 is that I had so much pain in my body, and my son didn't know what to do with me. I was coming in from the garden at 10 o'clock at night and, arms full of produce, starving, because it was always garden o'clock from like 5 till dark. And yeah, he was just, I don't know what to do with my mum. And I'd created a monster with the garden, being the overachiever personality I am. And yeah, I think things just absolutely catapulted into, and all the shadows came up and all the darkness, and yeah, it got really, really bad. Not going to go into all the detail because I'm not allowed to. But all I can say is a plate of curry being hurled into the drawers of the kitchen and going right through all the drawers when I roared, found my voice and cracked wide open, pushed everybody away and just said, that's it. And that night, just the tears, the depth of emotion as I mopped and cleaned, and then I'd cry the most deep, dark soul. Oh, the depth of the depths, sobbing. But that was, as I said, sometimes you need to hit rock bottom. You need to go into that darkness to step into the light and really follow your soul. And that's what happened from there, was that my son moved out and I was like, well, this is it. This is what I've been wanting to be, actually free. And I travelled, I'd always, since 2020, when a lot of us kind of woke up, always been called to the Marlborough Sounds, and I went on a retreat there in October. Yeah, I'm just piecing these dates together, down to the beautiful Aharoa in the Abel Tasman. And so I'd been to this beautiful retreat, and I'd flown into Nelson. I hadn't gone through the sounds to get there. At the end of the retreat, I had physically pinned myself to the ground and said, I'm not going home. I can't face this anymore, because I'd seen myself and I didn't like her. And it was from that moment I went home, I knew I had to go back, and that land and that area was really calling me. So I got the dog, got the ute. My son had moved out, but then I was just like, well, I'm not there, so just look after the house and the chickens in the garden and oh my goodness, the monstrosity. So he stayed in the house. I went in the ute, drove all the way down, crossing the Inter-Islander, and the beautiful, amazing thing that had happened on the retreat is that I had met a woman who was so almost like a carbon copy of my soul, because of course she'd walked a different journey, but our journeys had been so similar, and she had been called to the same area. She was like, oh my goodness, I was called to the Marlborough Sounds too. And even the woman, the two sisters who ran the retreat there, that had the same calling. It's like something about that land that calls you, whether that's your final destination. It was really interesting. So I was like, I need to come back, and it all had felt too hard. And she had said to me, well, she never left. It was really interesting because she had the same calling, and she, she had all older kids. She was older than me, and so she had rented a little kind of cabin down there. And she said, Belinda, just stay with me. And it was like the leave pass that I needed to go back there. And so I went down and I just started the big explore of like, okay, well, if this place is really calling me, I need to come back here. And so I, bookmarked all these like properties on Trade Me, and there was one in Collingwood, and not sure I had said too much, but my soul had been calling me to a beach house, and I'd found this little one in Collingwood. So you go over to Nelson, then you go to Takaka over the big scary hill. Oh my goodness, driving over that hill was absolutely, I was so afraid of heights that, oh my goodness, that hill was terrifying for the first time to drive over. And Collingwood is out of Takaka, kind of heading towards Farewell Spit. Really sleepy. It was down this beautiful little road, this little house, and fell in instant love with it. Tried to buy it. The owners wanted too much money, and I just backed away. I couldn't stay with my friend any longer in a little cabin, so I put my name up for woofing, and this guy reached out to me. He'd fully looked at who I was and realised I was a graphic designer, and he was like, how about you stay on my... He had a really interesting little, all these log cabins at the bottom of the hill before you go over Takaka, the Rawakas. And he was like, okay, well, you can stay with me and help me build this website. And I was like, oh, okay. Don't really want to build a website, but I guess it beats physical labour, right? And I ended up managing to stay there over New Year's into January. Yeah, it was great. It was really cool. And my son came down. I was like, you have to come down. It's like so amazing here. You have to come down, and just, the little Nelson airport and the whole vibe is so cool. You got to come down. So he came down. Yeah, it was a little bit of a struggle for him because such a gym junkie. So he was driving back to Nelson every day. And anyway, we did that little adventure. Then, then it was all of a sudden all an urgency to drive all the way back up, and that's just another whole story of how torturous that was when you've got a teenager that's having withdrawal from... I'm not sure what it was all about. It was a whirlwind. Anyway, we made it back, thank goodness, in a big hurry. Actually, I missed a little bit. So over New Year's, I'd met some beautiful people down there. I'd kind of joined a little community garden, and I'd met a beautiful, beautiful woman down there who had said to me, what are you doing for New Year's Eve? You've got to come up to Anahata. And Anahata was like an ashram up the top of Takaka Hill, and the elevation, there's something about the energy, as I say, the energy of that land and the elevation that was quite painful actually on my back at the time, and it was, full on right through the night, music, and it was pretty next level. So that's where I ended up on New Year's. And then leading into this is my caravan, Chrysalis caravan story. So this is how I found my caravan. So I stayed there. Oh, what is Sparks and I must have stayed? I borrowed a tent. That's right. So Sparks and I stayed in a tent up the top at Anahata. Oh my goodness, it was so cold. That's right. I had to get a whole lot of cushions out of the yurt that everything was happening in. Put them underneath my bedding. It was freezing cold. Oh my goodness. Yeah, even though it was summer. And right next door there was a caravan. And that next morning when I woke up, I was like, can I have a look at your caravan? Because I'm looking to buy a caravan. And it was a really beautiful couple that were like, no, you can't have, they were impeccable about their caravan. And no, Sparks was not allowed to go inside the caravan. And I said, can I get your details? And, when, and they said, we're selling it. I was like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. As I said, I'd done this journey, come back with my son, come back up to Auckland. I was like, well, I want to go back down. My son had started studying chefing. Eventually, he ended up moving into town and flatting because, when you're studying in town, you really want to live in town. He'd actually got an amazing job at The Grove, which is a fine dine restaurant. It's another guy there that was looking for a flatmate. And of course, I stood in the mirror early that morning and said, please, 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 I need to get Ali a really good flat. And I need, and the universe delivered that night when Ali came home and said, oh my goodness, Mum. And I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. The caravan that I'd found up the top of the hill had become available in February. I had listed my permaculture property for rent and I'd found someone. So oh my goodness. Then the torture of that month of January, end of January into beginning of February, like 2-3 weeks of packing an entire life of possessions. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, as I said, my beautiful friend was there. I mentioned that in my episode about the house. And we had the movers arrive and they said, you're not ready, we can't move you. And she was busy cleaning up fridges and none of the boxes were taped up. And I was just like, well, you have to. Like, there is no. And I was behind them taping boxes as they were holding them in their hands. It was so stressful that I actually couldn't speak. I was like, I couldn't actually get the words out because I was so stressed. That was one of the most stressful days of my life because there was no, you're paying these movers 200 and whatever an hour, right? And these tenants are moving in like the next day. Like, there is no, it's just holy mogoly. That was just, and then even that night I'm like, oh my god, I've still got stuff. And then the tenants were coming the next day and I'm still ramming things into the back of my truck, kind of like, that part of the chapter was full on. So from there I had a few days grace until this caravan I'd found was ready, and stayed at my beautiful friend, stayed at her house for a few, gosh, could have been a week or so on her little farm. And then, yeah, it was so exciting. Drove down, picked up this caravan. I'd barely towed before, like I'd backed a trailer a couple of times into the driveway, but picking up this caravan was another big scary thing. But you just got to do the big scary things. And got it pre-inspected, hooked it on the back of my ute, and I joined the NZMCA, New Zealand Motor Caravan Association, and it was kind of exciting because you can basically jump between all their sites. They've got these amazing big fields, quite literally, that you can park in. There's water. My caravan was like off the grid, so as long as I had water, that's really all that mattered. And it was safe and it was gated, and they're awesome. So it's $5 a night. So when you are going through this kind of metamorphosis, it's so nice to just go, it's $5 a night. Like, your costs are so low apart from petrol, and if you don't move around too much, then it's a great way of just, it was, for me, my caravan was a chrysalis. It was really coming home to who I am, and sorting out the junk in my trunk is another saying. Just having that time with you and yourself only gives tremendous growth, and I solidly believe in everybody's lifetime that it's a journey that you need to take. And I know that when I talk to people, and even about now that I'm in this down here in this beautiful beachside community that's quite remote, and I say to people, but why don't you live here? They're like, we just can't, because, and underneath it all, I think it's that whole time with themselves. Sometimes it's people don't want to have that time to think. But being the introverted me, I love it. And that time in the caravan was incredible. And for me, it wasn't about the travel. It was a real self journey, and I was looking for a beach house. That's why, because as I said, I missed the property and didn't miss it. It wasn't the one in Collingwood, and I knew I needed to be just beside the ocean with that feeling of expansiveness. Every night, Sparks and I would go to a different beach, and then I would walk down every road looking at what was for sale. I had a few favourite spots that felt good. There was one little, they call them park over properties. There's one up in Dargaville. And it's interesting because my mum's mum actually was that was where her roots were, in Dargaville. So it's interesting that I ventured there. And it was it was actually pretty cool, called Glink's Gully. And there was, as I said, a park over property there where you could park in front of this batch on the front lawn. And there was like no one there. In the morning I'd go, there was like a motocross track, and you could just walk forever and ever and ever down this track. And it was just so isolated, and it was something that my soul was yearning, and it has for so long. You know, to be on a beach and just go, and just, like there's just no one there. There's something so freeing. And I still love that here, that even tonight when I was walking the dog, I'm like singing some crazy song, you know, just, you can just be with yourself and yourself only. So that was one favourite spot. And then I'd found another favourite spot just out of Masterton called Riversdale Beach, and I really liked it there too. That was a really cool NZMCA park, and I had it to myself. There was like no one there. I just love it, eh? Open up the caravan, all the windows open, and the sun's coming in, and I loved it there. And it was some quite cool walks there. One of them, I encountered some really cool seals, and one, oh my God, it was quite like, it was like, Sparks and I were walking in this, you know, we'd gone right around, and I kind of freaked out because there was this, you know, seal, and and Sparks was off the lead, so you've got to be careful. You actually need to be really careful, because they could. And then I'd walked into this little forest past that beach, and oh my goodness, and there was heaps more seals in the forest. And I sat there for a while, and that was another really magic spot. So I quite like Riversdale Beach, but Glink's Gully, Riversdale Beach, they were both surf beaches. And, you know, I had a vision in my head that I wanted to take a kayak out or a paddleboard, and I wanted to swim every day for my health. So they weren't the one. I couldn't venture south because, as I said, my son was still doing chefing, so I could do these kind of little North Island tiki tours to find a beach house, but I couldn't cross over because he, you know, was doing his restricted driving test and needed to be there for that. And he had some really cool little lovely lunches at the chef school, and I wanted to be there for that. And I also spent somewhere in between that, I'd spent 3 months actually on my friend's land. She had made me a little spot, my little paddock. She still calls it. That's your caravan park, Belinda. It'll always be there for you. It's so sweet. So I'd actually ended up staying there. Yeah, that's another part of my story. Is I actually, when I was there, I got really, 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 really sick. Oh my goodness, so sick in the caravan that I actually was on the brink of, like, I think you need to call an ambulance. I was so sick. And I'm wondering whether, because, when you're in a caravan, you've got to, the worst part of it is the dump stations, because you've got to dump your black water, your poo and pee. And yeah, I'm wondering whether, something I always wore gloves, and, but it's kind of gross, right? It's just part of the deal. And yeah, I'd been so sick. I'd actually passed out in the caravan. Luckily, I fell backwards, and not forwards. So yeah, that was an adventure. So when my son had finished doing his study, he was like, okay, well, why don't we go on this big adventure and this whole, we got to catch, he was really into hunting and all that stuff. So he had this whole vision that we were going to travel and live off the land by, what he caught, and do this big production together. And so I was like, okay, well, you're going to need a roof tent for your ute, and because you're not staying in the caravan with me, like, personal space, it's just not going to happen. And so we got the roof tent and off we went. When he'd finished his study, we packed up this flat. Oh my goodness. And off we ventured. And so we'd kind of headed back to the Caravan, because I really wanted to show him around here, because out of all the places I'd been to, like, I really love Whitianga, and when I came out to where I am now, I just was like, this was my favourite spot out of everywhere, because it ticked all the boxes. Of course, at that point there was nothing for sale, but a couple of months, sorry, how does this all go together? So we were heading south. Like, our decision was, I know I just said Coromandel, it felt good, but Ali, my son, was hell-bent on, like, I don't want to be in the North Island. We need to get away. We need to go to the South Island. And as I said, I'd been called down there, and that was the plan. But in between that, he wanted to do a little, and I'd say, let's just, I want to show you here. And he'd invited his friend down. They'd gone out spearfishing. Gosh, between that, we'd actually gone up to the Bay of Islands. He was like, I want to go to the Bay of Islands. And first, oh my goodness, there's so many adventures. I might as well tell you about this one. This is actually pretty, oh my goodness. Yeah, this is kind of funny. So he was, okay, I want a boat. I need a boat. So he's a 17-year-old that's never backed a trailer in his life. I want a boat. And I'm like, we're going to have to stay in these NZMCA parks on our journey down to the South Island. You can't just have a boat and a trailer and you don't know how to back. And towing, it's not going to happen. And this is a strong-willed 17-year-old, his way or the highway. And I was like, no. And then I silly said, how about an inflatable one? Oh, I shouldn't have said it. So we're up in the Bay of Islands with this inflatable boat for the first time. Just me, and it was either Ali goes out, my son goes out by himself, or Sparks and I come too. So we were standing at the where were we? Can't remember what it was called. Up in the Bay of Islands, in this campground. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to go because I don't feel safe letting him go by himself. So this freaking inflatable boat with this dodgy motor that barely started. He's wanting to go spearfishing. No anchor. Gosh, I'm going to sound like such a numpty sharing this. Ugh. So he's out in the water. All I could do to keep Sparks and I away from the rock. Sparks had a life jacket and I had a life jacket. We're not completely bonkers. Was to keep paddling. And when you're spearfishing, apparently, I haven't got in there yet. I guess at some point I need to. The time just passes, but for the person on the boat, time doesn't pass. It's boring as batshit. So there I was, paddle, 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 to try and keep this freaking inflatable boat from the rocks. And I'm like, like, oh my gosh. And then they can't hear me because he's in the water. I'm like, I've had enough. Shoot. Yep, it was one of the most frustratingly times, but we made it back alive. It determined he wanted to go too far, blah, 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 and this freaking inflatable boat. Oh my goodness. But he got a kingfish, so this is a great story. I'm glad I'm telling it. So we come back with this, maybe, not kingfish, crayfish. Whew, and he wants to cook it. And yeah, I'm in a caravan. Well, we're in the caravan, right? In a campground with a crayfish. And so he's trying to cook it, and then he wanted to boil it, and I'm like, well, that's not happening in the caravan. Can you, like, you gotta sleep in there. So, oh gosh. And it did get boiled for a little bit, and there was, oh my gosh, that's crazy things that happen. And then, you know, of course, we made the table in the caravan, and this huge great crayfish. It was the crayfish in the caravan story. And then he ended up, because he didn't want to waste anything, you know, boiling it for broth, whatever, in the campground kitchen. And then we were travelling, right? So we had to then transport the crayfish broth in a container in my caravan fridge on the undulating. Oh my goodness me, the crayfish in the caravan story. Oh, and then on top, so that, yeah. So I got really frustrated about this boat adventure. And it was interesting because when I went to the campground to pay for another night, they were like, yeah, we're really worried about you guys. We'd seen you go out, and we'd actually almost sent out a search party. And I came back to the caravan and I told Holly that's, and he was like, that's not true. And then someone later the next day actually said it was, and he was like, oh. So yeah, I'd got my proverbial knickers in a knot, and I was like, I've had enough. I don't want to travel with you. I'm like, I'm going. For the beginning of our, as I said, our adventure of this, we're going to do this catch and live on the road adventure together, and we're going to film it, and it's going to be this production. So funny. Dear. And then I was all ready to go. I'm going to run away. I'm going to bugger off, and because that's what I do. I run. Oh my goodness. And then I looked at, just about to up and leave, like that's it. And I looked at the jockey wheel, you know, the wheel on the caravan, and it was forked. Completely ripped to shreds. Somehow in between, you know, you always have these oopsies in the caravan, and I'd had an oopsie. It'd been further, as I said, further down actually. Anyway, it happened a while ago, but it had completely, that it was D-Day for this, so I wasn't going anywhere. And being a female, thank goodness, it does have its, you know, people really willing to help you, which I'm super grateful for. And one of the guys who'd actually, it was interesting, this whole caravan thing, because I met a few people who actually sold their houses, sold everything, and were living in caravans. It's like, wow, like I met quite a few people like that actually on my journey. And so really nice guy, was like, I've got an account with a company, and let's get you a wheel. So I managed to get me a new wheel, managed to put it on for me. We got it couriered overnight to, a shop in the Bay of Island, wherever we were, Pie here, whatever, and got this new wheel on. By then I'd kind of like got over myself. We'd had the conversation and we'd made it all better, and I wasn't running away, and our journey was continuing on. So yeah, next point of next location on our journey was he wanted to go with his friend for the last time before we went forever down to the South Island, and we ended up where I am now. And in the meantime, I still needed some space, and I'd let him go, and then I surprised him and ended up here. And while I was waiting for him to come back in with his friend, was talking to some locals here, a local here, and I said, look, I'm looking for property. I love your house, because I'd loved his house when I came here. And he goes, mine's not for sale, but there's one down the road for sale. And I looked at it, and it was 2-story, and I'm like, I don't really want a 2-story house, and kind of parked it, didn't even look. So off we went. That was the end of the North Island. Off we went, heading south. So we went on the Inter-Islander, crossed over, and so Ali was looking for chefing jobs, but there was nothing, just because it was still in winter, and a lot of the wineries and all that down there don't open until it was August. They don't really start opening up again, so it was just nothing was happening. And in between all that, good old Inter-Islander with its lovely heating, we'd both got really, 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 really bad influenza. So the whole time in the South Island, chronically, talk about the 2 caravan illnesses. It's so crook. I ended up one night hugging a tree, just saying, can you please help me? I was so sick. Luckily, had to stay in a campsite, because I just had to have warm showers, which you can't have in a caravan for any great length of time. Oh, it was just, it's awful. And my beautiful friend, as I said, who'd offered me the cabin when I went down there, she was staying in the same campsite. So her and her husband had ended up taking the same adventure, and they were pretty much living on this campsite while they were finding their roots. And I never got to see her because I was so sick. So nothing was working out. Ali was like, I don't like it here. and he was like, let's look at this house. Pulled it up. And I was like, and he goes, oh my gosh, Mum, it's like amazing. So it was going for auction. And yeah, so the weather was turning really badly. I'd kind of got better enough to travel. Yeah, there was this little window of opportunity to cross back over, and we grabbed it. Oh my goodness. The beginning was good, getting out of the Marlborough Sounds, but as soon as we started crossing the strait, holy mogoly, it was so rough. It was so bad that I thought, I'll just stand outside, because, oh my goodness, maybe I can breathe and not, empty my stomach. But yeah, everyone was sick, and it was so bad. It was so bad. Oh, it was one of the worst. Oh, it was so awful. So my caravan was on the top deck, and it had got so much sea spray. So I was wet from standing outside. I'd been bleh-ing. And got to Wellington at night time. I was cold. I was wet. I'd been bleh-ing. And I had to wash the caravan because I wasn't leaving all that salt spray over it. You know me. Well, you don't know me, but you're starting to know me really well. That I need to fix things, and I need to do it now. So in dry room on Wellington, trying to find a car wash. And I find one. I managed to get into the car wash, but then I can't get out of the car wash with the caravan in the middle of the, 7, 8 o'clock at night. So they had to move a whole lot of trailers because it was attached to a service station. Had to unchain a whole lot of trailers to then try and maneuver my caravan around and out. Oh my goodness. So yeah, when we got back to the NZMCA in Plymouth, it's actually quite nice there, Plymouth. Anyway, that's the only one they've got down near Wellington. It's quite a nice one. Oh God, I was so over it. Just so over it. And then, impatient teenager. I want to go to the Caravan, and he'd applied for a few jobs up here, and he'd got one, so everything was flowing. So we rushed up here. He made it a day ahead of me with his roof tent. Looked at the house. It was amazing. Yeah, I guess the rest is history, because that was the journey. In between so many dark nights of the soul in the caravan, so much healing, and heaps of just sorting stuff out on all levels. And the auction was really interesting for this place. There was very few people came to the open homes, and of course I'd came to everyone when I was down here, so I'd come and I'd hang out here because it was empty and sit on the deck and just couldn't wait to move in. So that was August. Ali had found a flat. He'd got this job, and I was still in the caravan waiting to move into this place. Yeah, talk about wanting time to collapse. It was like, I've outgrown this caravan. I've grown so much as a person, so much healing, and I'm ready, and I've found my soul alive. I feel the emotion right now. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'd found my soul home, and I just wanted to move it. Just let me out of this caravan. Oh, yeah, I'd so outgrown it. As much as I loved it and appreciated it, everything, the way it held me, but I was so ready. Oh my goodness. So yeah, that's my caravan story. The biggest growth I've had in my entire life, of coming home to who I am. Amazing. Wow. And now I'm here I am. It's now 5:40 in the morning, recording episode 6, telling you of this story. Lesson, nuggets of wisdom to share is your soul always knows. And I guess that calling for me was the Marlborough Sounds. And I had to take that crossing with my son to know that, to tick it off the list that maybe that wasn't right, but we had to take that crossing to come back home to where we are. But yeah, I think that the lesson is there's something. And then when I talk to people, there's always this dream. But don't ignore the dream. And sometimes the dream seems like, how am I ever going to achieve that, or get there, or live there, or do that? But don't give up on your dreams. Do the big scary thing. Cut the ties. What's the worst that can happen? Live a life well lived. Don't just work it away. Don't stay in relationships on land that doesn't light you up. Just listen to that deep voice. Shut out the noise. Breathe and listen. Because your answers to your soul's calling and where you're meant to be and what you're meant to be doing, you'll find it there. Over and out. From Curious. Bing.